Okay, and we are live right now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Enlightening Tangent podcast. I'm your host, Gautam, aka the Seeker of Wisdom. And today we have Jennifer here with us for our episode. Hi, Jennifer. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Excited to be here.
Likewise, I'm really excited to have you here. And yeah, so why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and we can take it from there?
Sure. Where to start? Well, since the topic is probably spiritual and our spirituality and journey and Neville Goddard and all that, I've been studying spirituality for at least 20 years. I started with Wayne Dyer, and I used to just whatever city I was in, and if he was there, I would go see him, and
Okay,
listen to him lecture, and he was amazing. And
awesome.
Yeah, and I studied him for a while, Louise Hay, Abraham Hicks, and then during the pandemic, I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I didn't want to fall into the eating cycle, the depressed cycle, all of that. I wanted to do something constructive with my time, and I started listening to Bob Proctor, and I got into one of his programs, and I actually studied with him in his inner circle before about a year before he passed, and that was a
Right.
6 month. Yeah, that was for 6 months, and it was amazing. And he actually introduced me to Neville Goddard. Looking back now, I see that Wayne used to talk about him a lot, but I never connected it. And it's when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So I know now that I probably couldn't have comprehended all that Neville encompassed back then. My mind wasn't expanded yet. My consciousness hadn't expanded yet. And now I study him daily. I run two groups that we study him every week. I'm probably going to add a third this week. And yeah, I just carry all of his teachings with me daily. And
Amazing.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so these groups they are Facebook groups, so
We have them on Zoom. They're two small private groups right now. I
right,
wasn't really looking to expand at the moment, but
right.
my sister recently had a retreat in Tulum, Mexico, which was just life changing. Honestly, we were a group of 40, and everyone there was like minded and expansive and open to everything and attached to nothing, as Wayne says. And they are anxious for me to start a group because I gave a lecture there, and it was phenomenal. And that's another part of me that has shifted since 2020, since studying with Bob. Usually, I would be very nervous and have to have everything written down and be more concerned about what I was going to say than be concerned with how the audience was receiving the information. And I shifted all of that to now be more concerned with the fact that I'm giving them this beautiful information and how to change their lives. And it's not about me, it's about them. And it's about being present in the moment and allowing yourself to be a vessel for anything that the divine wants to come through and speak about. And I had a small outline, but it was nothing that I really was committed to or was married to. And it just flowed. And a lot of people went to my sister afterwards and gave such amazing feedback on what I had presented, the information I gave.
Amazing, amazing. I think it's like that for a lot of people. I think I resonate with you completely when you say like
Mm.
how things just comes to you very naturally. It's like almost like the divine
Yeah.
is using you as a way to deliver these messages to others.
Mm.
And even with like Neville, I discovered Neville during the pandemic as well, such as yourself.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I know for a fact that if it was like me discovering him prior to that, maybe I wouldn't have had the aptitude to acknowledge all the nuances in his messages and knowledge that he is imparting on others. And actually, now that you mentioned your sister, I actually discovered her first through the pandemic as well. So yeah, and that's another whole rabbit hole. Which we
Yes, of course, of course, yes.
we will get to that definitely. But no,
Yep.
I definitely resonate with you on that. That you put it very beautifully, and I'm so glad that folks are getting these messages from you, because I think there's always space for folks to come in and to learn about all these things and to spread this knowledge elsewhere as well, because everyone who does that is helping others to really understand their true power within them. which now more
Mhm.
so than ever is so 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 important.
Yes. Actually, my whole talk was really about um, learning to live from the inside out instead of the outside in. We've been conditioned our whole lives to look outside of ourselves for answers,
Mm.
for other people's opinions, for approval, for validation of who we are, for our worth, and it's all inside of us. Every answer that we could possibly ever want in life is inside of us, and Neville is such an advocate for that. His one of his biggest lessons is inner speech and how you speak to yourself and
Yes.
how you perceive yourself, because um, if you allow someone else to define who you are, you will never fulfill the divine potential within you, which um, is this great being, this higher self that God put in you, and everything that you are here to do. Because no one can do what we are here to do, but we have to live in the fearlessness and the faith that we can accomplish it. Because if God put that desire in us, it doesn't matter. The how doesn't matter, as Neville always says. It doesn't matter as long as you live from that
Yes.
space and acknowledge that divine potential within you. Know that it's there, harness it, believe it. Um, See yourself as that. I just had this conversation earlier that if you want to be an actress, if you want to be a CEO, an amazing entrepreneur, if you can't imagine yourself or see yourself in that role, feel yourself in that role, then you'll never get there.
Right, right, right. Yes. I think seeing yourself within and really accepting it within first is
Mm,
key to really seeing it in the 3D reality for sure. And part of what I do in my coaching process is working with clients. If they can't see it, that's the first thing that we work on is, okay, why can't you
mm,
see yourself doing such a
yeah,
thing? And
yes,
that's pretty much the root, like the way I address the root cause of the issues that they have is really asking them, okay, why can't you perceive the desires as though it's already being done?
yes,
And I think that is the key. Like I think you mentioned it very well, because I do think that you have to first see it in your mind before
mm,
you can experience it in the 3D. And I've always
yeah,
had that experience, like every single time that I experience something in the 3D these days, because I'm more aware of it. Like now I don't
absolutely.
see because I'm always connecting the dots to towards my
Mhm.
past. So okay, how did this happen, how did that happen? I can always tell, like, okay, this was a result of me saying this like a couple months back, or this was a result of me doing XYZ. And I
Mm,
can always kind of connect the dots. And it's always really really rewarding in a way, because you know that your thoughts are constantly creating, and
yes.
now you're using it to consciously create the life that you want. Because maybe up till a
Mm,
certain point in our lives, we were doing it very unconsciously. We were accepting beliefs that didn't serve us, but now that we know all these things, it's like we are using it to create a life that we want in a conscious way.
yes. Absolutely. I think that approach is brilliant. And you said the key word, which is aware. Awareness is first and foremost in this work. Being aware of how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what your habits are, how you perceive yourself, how you perceive others, how you perceive the world, and being aware that um, that the subconscious is impersonal. So if you're one of those people that constantly has arguments in your mind with people and you're telling people off, because trust me, I used to be there.
Right.
Neville in the Power of Awareness, chapter 7, he talks about this and how we all do this. And if we have those thoughts, those fights, those things coming from the ego, then that's what's going to show up in your life, regardless if you're thinking of someone else or yourself, because the subconscious mind doesn't differentiate between you and someone else. If you're thinking
Exactly.
a bad thought about another person, the subconscious doesn't know that it isn't about you.
Right, right. I think, yeah, that's very important, because I think
Mm,
oftentimes when we think that we are being angry at someone else and things like that, like
yeah.
the subconscious mind doesn't exactly like comprehend it that way. It just really absorbs the mood of the conversations that we are having
Exactly.
within, and
Mm,
it gets pushed out maybe through that person that we are having an argument with, but sometimes it can come through others as well. So This is why I
Yeah.
always tell people, like, for example, if you begin the day in a very angry way, chances are,
Mhm.
you're going to have trouble in the traffic. People are going to do things to you, and
Mhm.
circumstances will align itself in such a way that the momentum gets carried forward. But it's also true for the favorable thoughts as well. If you begin the day good, like,
Mm.
circumstances are going to align itself in such a way that everything is going to be favorable for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some people believe thoughts create feelings. Some people believe feelings create thoughts. I think it goes both ways. But from those thoughts and feelings, you place yourself on a vibration. And
Right.
that vibration then determines the frequency. So if you're having an argument in your mind, that's the frequency you're going to be on all day long, regardless if you meet the person you're having the fight with in your mind. It doesn't
Right.
matter. That's where the how it's impersonal.
I agree with you. So, because you have explored Neville as well, I'd like to really get your opinion
Mm.
on this. What are your opinions on the idea of feelings? Like, because in the law of assumption community, there's this thing that's
Mhm.
always being thrown around that feelings aren't as important more than like
Mhm.
thoughts, because thoughts are creating your reality. Like, they always say that you can really feel, like anxious or nervous or even feel like very crappy throughout the
Mhm.
day. But if your thoughts are in alignment to whatever you want, if you're consciously thinking that, okay, this is a done deal and whatnot, you will get what you want. Like, do you agree with that? Like, based on your experience, like, what have you experienced? Yeah.
Based on my experience, I truly believe that, like Neville says, feeling is the secret. I do. I
Right.
think thoughts do create, but they only can create to a point that
Mm.
until you feel it. Because feeling really the emotional aspect of this work is what puts you on the frequency.
Mm.
Um, thoughts thoughts can be, I don't know. I feel like that feeling is the key there. Thoughts, because when I wake up in the morning, if I'm not in a good mood,
Mm-hmm.
a thought, if I change my thoughts, I can change my mood. But it's my
Mm.
mood then that will set the tone for the rest of the day because it determines the frequency, in my opinion.
Right, right, right. Okay, okay, okay.
Because when
Because
you so
yeah.
let me give you one example. If you have an experience and you go back to that memory in your mind and it's a great experience, are you just thinking about it or are you feeling it?
I'm feeling it. Yes.
Yeah. So I
Mm.
I truly believe that feeling is the secret. That feeling is the more powerful of the two.
Right. So, because when in the law of assumption community, this is another thing as well. Like what you said, feeling is the secret, but the word feeling is very interpreted very differently, I think, compared to what you are saying. They normally call it feeling it real is what's emphasized rather than
Okay.
feeling as in emotions being emphasized. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that he meant it as emotions, or do you think he meant it more like feeling it real, feeling the desires real in our mind is what the emphasis was on?
Well, if I'm understanding you correctly, feeling it real do you mean like feeling it real as far as the senses, touching it,
Yes, yes,
standing in a
yes,
room?
yes.
I think that is part of it, but I think the true feeling is the secret is the emotion, the emotional aspect, the emotional component. If you think
Mm,
about it, the
mm,
emotional component is what connects us to everything, to the people
right,
in our lives.
right,
I can
right,
be in a room with my mom, but I'm feeling an emotion towards her, not just the physical sensation of being in her presence or touching her arm or same thing with my husband. It's the emotional connection that
right,
that that brings us that's where I feel like we can access the divine within each other through that emotional component, not the physical sense.
right, right, right. No, that makes absolutely complete sense to me because, I'm always about learning new, different perspectives, and I think what you just mentioned really put a new spin on something that I've already known, and
Mm.
I'm gonna definitely explore this. I'm gonna take this and definitely look into it more. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to quickly like divert the conversation. Like, where
Mhm.
did this all begin in the sense that, like, were you always spiritually inclined since childhood, or how did this journey began for you, like this spiritual journey?
Um, I feel like I was, you know what, I was always what they call an old soul.
Okay, okay,
I
okay.
always surrounded myself with older people. I always had such a
Likewise,
strong
yes.
desire, right? I
Right,
just
right.
always had such a strong desire to learn. And just going back to feeling, when you learn something, you just don't, I never wanted to learn just intellectually. I didn't just want to learn and
Mm,
have it in my brain. I wanted to feel it and have it resonate deeply with me. And
mm,
that's what Neville does. And that's what Wayne did. And that's what Bob Proctor did. But Neville really goes deeper, I feel, than the others, because he has such a clear um, way of explaining things. He has a clear way of deciphering old stories that I thought I knew. And he just takes them and turns them, because I grew up Catholic, and he speaks a lot about Bible stories, and
right.
it's not a religious component at all. It's explaining literally the process of creation. And when
Mhm.
I'm sure you've read The Law and the Promise.
Right.
Um,
Yes. Yes. I've read it. Yeah.
when you get to the last chapter, which is called The Promise, I couldn't understand it when I first read it. I said, "What? I still don't
Mm,
understand what the promise is." And now, after being so comfortable with him and his works, I've realized that the promise is that we move from becoming the created to becoming the creators, like God.
right.
We
Right.
move from
Right.
becoming the Son to the Father.
Yes.
And um, when we become the creators, we literally have uh, our path for life set. We literally can access anything we want. And that's where feeling comes in again, the emotional component of it. Because
Mm,
I don't believe, like, you can go into the quantum field and pull any scenario that you desire from there and put yourself in there. But if you don't have the emotional component, there's no connection.
right. 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 Okay. 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 Amazing. I think like I love how you connect all the dots that we have been speaking thus far. And yeah, I think I always thought about, and I'd love to know your opinion about this as well, is I always thought that our life's purpose is for us to realize that we are God, like we are God incarnate. And
Hmm.
is this what the promise is saying in your opinion, or is it like a variation of that? Like, what do you think?
I believe that I believe that God is omnipresent, which means God is in
Mm,
everything. So that means God
mhm,
is in me and you and all of
mm,
us. It's in
mm,
animals. It's in God is everywhere. And the part that's in us,
mm.
I believe is like it says, in God's image and likeness. And there's a book called The Impersonal Life
Okay.
by I think it's Joseph Brennan, I think his name is. And in this book, it talks about how God is expressing itself through all of us to for experience. Um,
Mm,
that's why we are all different. That's why we all have a different purpose. And I thought that explanation was so beautiful, because we've been so conditioned to believe that there is strong competition and you have to be the best and number one. And that's
mm.
not everyone's destiny. The only person that we're in competition with is who we used to be, our old self, the old
Right.
man, not allowing
Right.
the old man back.
Right.
And this whole journey with Neville has really shown me that I have to unlearn a lot of things that I've learned and been conditioned to believe. And my beliefs have shifted dramatically.
Yes, I mean it's definitely a such a pivotal experience. I think what he did for me is so I can't put it into words in the sense that it's very liberating. And
Mm,
I remember like listening to his recordings, and I think if you're an old soul, you would really resonate with like hearing his lectures, because like there's a certain appeal and a charm to it.
mm,
And you know, like I always love listening to his recordings, and I remember the first time I listened to it,
mm,
I was just in tears, even though he was
mm.
talking about imagination, visualization, things that I already knew, exploring the law of attraction. The
Yeah.
way he just put it, like it was so different, and it has such a clarity in his voice.
Mm,
And I will
yes.
never forget that day. Yeah.
No, agreed. I feel the same way. There's one specific video on YouTube that just brings me to tears about a girl who was it was Christmas Eve. You
Oh
may
yes,
know this.
that's the one I was talking about actually.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too. That's
yeah,
the
yeah,
one.
yeah.
He and I always say this as we read Neville, because I study Neville in the groups, and I pick a different book every time we're finished. And I always say what a way this man has with words and with explanations, and it's
Right,
so crystal clear.
right.
And when I read him, he just touches my soul. He really does. Resonates very deeply.
He really does, yes. And I think he has a very I don't know what you think about it, but I think he really has a very interesting way of like simplifying things as well. I
Yes.
think he really learned it from his mentor. And
Mm,
even his like early manifestation journeys and whatnot, like it really showed. I think they really went down into the bare bones of manifesting. Like it's only you and your desires. Like even when we were
mm,
like when I was listening to the Barbados story, for example, like he
mm.
wasn't talking about Neville, no, you have to overcome your self concept, you have to overcome your negative beliefs and things like that. It was straight up, you are now
Yes.
in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
And I really
Agreed.
love that approach. Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree with you wholeheartedly because the some of the other gurus that I've studied that I still love, but I feel like it's so much more complicated, and you have
Mhm.
to remove your blocks and you have to change your
Mm,
negative thoughts. And yes, we have to change our negative thoughts, but are there really blocks, or is it just a
mm,
belief that there are blocks?
mm,
It's just
mm,
shift. All you have to do, like Neville says, shift your focus. That's really all you have to do. Shift the focus.
mm.
Because some of us are just so focused on the negative aspects of our life that we never show a moment of gratitude. There's this when I was in Bob's class,
Mhm.
one of the women that ran the group, beautiful woman named Cleona, she used to teach us about micro gratitude. And she said, it's just a practice that I do. You wake up in the morning, you're grateful for your bed, you're grateful for your pillow, you're grateful for the night's sleep, you're grateful that you can see the sun in the morning. You're grateful that you can get up and get out of the bed because some people cannot. And
Mm.
it does is shift. That little shift just changes the whole trajectory of your day.
I love that micro
Mhm.
gratitude. I love
Yeah.
that term. Yeah, I think there was a point in my life when I manifested my dream job in the army. There was a point when I used to go to this like mini island off of Singapore. So that's how our
Mhm.
training is. And I remember it was such a depressive state for me. And like what she did, like I was grateful for the sun, I was grateful for the ocean views, and I was grateful for all these
Mhm.
things. And what it did was it just shifted my momentum. By the end of 6 weeks, I actually got the job that I was manifesting. And
Wow.
yeah, so I really deeply resonate with what the lady mentioned about micro
Mhm.
gratitude. I'm never going to forget that, because I think
Mhm.
that's a very nice way of putting it. Being grateful for the little things in life. But even then, like I always tell people, like they're not so little if you really think about it, because and this is going down in another rabbit hole, but very
Mhm.
briefly, but I think we have been really, a lot of things in our world these days have been very sterilized. Like, we don't see how maybe a chicken gets to the supermarket, for
Mm.
example, because I'm really
Mhm.
looking into off-grid living and things like that. So I was like looking, okay,
Yeah.
well, how do you actually like get a chicken, how do you raise it, and how do
Mhm.
how does it get to the table? And a lot of people, I was just reading the comments on some of those like YouTube videos and everything. And that is when you realize like how unaware people are sometimes,
Yeah.
how like
Yeah.
how to pluck the feathers, how to maybe cut out the bird, and how do you package it and keep it. And it might seem like very little things, but like because we have not experienced that, we don't know. And I think it's a completely different feeling when you raise a chicken and do all those things to get it to the table. You will feel with every single bite a very genuine sense of gratitude, because you have not taken the process for granted, versus if you just get it from, say,
Mm.
McDonald's or something like that, you,
Yeah.
even though you paid for it, technically speaking, it's just not the same, because you're not going through the process, so you don't know. You can't really invoke a sense of gratitude. I mean, you can say, yes, I'm thankful for the food and everything, but
Mhm.
because you have not gone through the process, there's no genuine sense of gratitude there. So I always tell people, like, if you really want to invoke a genuine sense of gratitude, think about the process, think about the people involved, and
Mm.
thank those people, and the gratitude will automatically just fill up your being.
Yes, I absolutely love that. A dear friend of mine who we're Italian and she's
Okay.
Italian and she's her grandmother and her great grandmother, they used to do that. They used to kill the chicken and they used to kill the animal and they used to,
Mm,
and there was such a reverence for the animal. And
mm,
that's one of the issues with how we feel these days, and how the lack of experience removed the reverence. And I love that word and the whole concept of reverence, because It's actually Neville's last chapter in The Power of Awareness. It's called Reverence, because having divinity within us should automatically give us a sense of reverence for everything.
Mm.
And when you don't go through the process and you don't see the animal and you don't, my friend that I was telling you about, we were talking about how when our grandmothers and great grandmothers actually performed this almost like a ceremony of sacrificing the animal so the family could eat, they literally used every piece of the animal. The bones would be for the broth, and it would just continue and continue because they had that reverence for the animal. They knew that it gave its life so we could feast, we could feast and we could eat and we can live. And that's that gratitude and that reverence is kind of what's missing. And I love that you tell people that, the whole process of getting it to the table.
Oh, absolutely. Because that was a realization that I had. Like, I don't know why I was thinking about this, but somewhere along the line, I realized that we don't know a lot of things. If we were to really like live an off-grid life, for example, if we were to like wanting to live that life, like if you think about what we actually know, like especially for me, I'm in my early 20s now. I really don't know anything, and I admit that like I really wouldn't know anything. And that kind of showed how dependent we are on this system.
Yes.
And that was when I realized, like, okay, these are the things that you have to learn. And in the process of thinking about this, in the process of really discovering this, that's when I developed a genuine sense of gratitude for this. And I think experiencing certain things also helps you be grateful for. You just won't see certain things in your life the same way. So for example, when I was learning driving, I really deeply appreciated all the bus drivers who could do a perfect right turn or a left turn and right into the curb and everything without hitting anything. And I just had like massive respect for them after that, because I went through something that made me realize that. And like, I think you mentioned this as well earlier, like the lack of experiences these days is, I think the system has been designed to keep us that way. I'm not sure
Yes.
how true that is, but I do feel that, especially in the schooling system where we learn things that we don't use, but the things that we do need, like we have
Yep.
like zero knowledge. It's really sad to
Absolutely.
think about. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Since the pandemic, I have such an enormous respect for truck drivers
Mm,
and getting the food to the markets so we have access to it. And
mm,
yes, unfortunately, we've become so dependent on this system. And I agree with you that the system is designed to keep us outside of ourselves. And that's why I try to teach living from the inside out instead of the outside in, turning off the TV, limiting your social media time, um, sitting with your own imagination, whether it's meditation or just visualizing, so you get to know
mm,
yourself better. Not relying on even your parents' opinion of you,
mm,
not needing validation from outside of yourself. And when I say turn off the news, everything is energy. So when you have the TV on and it's blaring and it's telling you all these negative stories, because that's all the news is negative after negative after negative story. And it doesn't stop there. When you watch TV shows, most of them are about murder or sex, and it takes,
mm.
what it does is it takes out, especially like, I mean, sex is everywhere. It takes
Yes.
out the connection between you and the other person, and it makes it very casual. And sexual energy is something to be harnessed, and it's something to be sacred, because when you give it away and you become more shallow. I truly believe that. Even Napoleon Hill talks about harnessing energy, especially
Yes.
sexual energy.
Yes.
And because there's a way to use our energy, and we've lost all of this in as society progresses, and they see it as a progression. I see it as a regression, because we're moving further and further away from ourselves. I mean, even little children now, I don't have children, but I don't think that I want to, until
Mm.
things shift dramatically. Because I don't want my child to sit at a table and for him to behave, have to sit there with an iPad in front of him.
Oh,
I
100%. Yeah.
I don't want that. I was watching. There's an Instagram channel, and this couple homeschools their children, and
Hmm.
they literally do schoolwork for 2 hours of the day, and the rest of the day they learn about they're on the farm. They learn how to farm. They learn how to can food. They learn how to deal with the
Amazing.
animals. Yeah, and it's life skills that we've lost. We've completely lost life
Mm.
skills.
Definitely. I think I really share the sentiment with you here, especially with kids. Like I often think about that a lot, in the sense that like, okay, how, because bringing a life into this world is a huge thing, and it's a big deal. And part of me always wonders, like, do you really want to do it? Because like looking at the state of the world, and I think you also have to be prepared to, like what this couple does that you just mentioned, homeschool kids, and really
Mm,
be in the place to nurture them and really give them the understanding that this is how the world is right now, and it's going
yes.
to be your generation that's going to make that shift as well in the process, and you guys are going to have to learn this, and you guys don't have shouldn't take anything for granted and things like that. I
Mm.
think like imparting those things to the, and we should be prepared for that, even before thinking about having kids. And I think like that's the way I view this whole thing right now. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard for me to not not be able to make that decision yet because I'm not,
Mhm.
I'm at the age where I have to make that decision fairly quickly. But
Right, right.
I do truly believe though that there is a shift and it's happening as we speak, and and it's coming even faster. So depending on what happens then and there, I know I'm either meant to at that point have children or at that point go out and help the world because we're going to need it. There's going to be a lot of people that are in such despair and shock when things start to be revealed that there's going to be people like us here to help them.
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's I sense this preparation phase that's going on right now, as underground as it may be right now. It's like the roots are really growing in the, beneath the soil, and we really can't measure the progress right now. But there's going to be a time, I feel like, when all this is going to be useful. We may not know how, but everything, it's like right now I feel like there's an accumulation process that's happening. People are
Mhm.
accumulating knowledge, people are really learning and also putting it to use in their own ways and in their lives and whatnot. But I think there's going to be a point where all of this is going to be so relevant, not just for ourselves, but for the rest of the world as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel it deeply. I know that I'm here for a bigger purpose. I've always been a teacher in one way or the other.
Hmm.
And just like you, I think your page is amazing. I love your posts.
Oh, thank
Sometimes I
you.
don't see them all the time. Sometimes I have to go look for you, but I think that happens to all of us
Right.
that's
Yeah.
spreading this message. But yeah, I think, and for me, Neville is just, he's so broad and he doesn't put you in a box like a religion.
Hmm.
And you can take what you like and leave the rest. And that's what I really like about him.
Oh, 100%. I think like there are so many aspects to him that I don't think everyone fully understands or fully comprehends.
Yes.
Like his concept for death, for example, or the world between worlds, where he talks about like there are different types of worlds, and he can go into a parallel almost reality just by sleeping and shifting into that.
Mhm.
And he talks about a world as just as terrestrial as this one, and those concepts are so mind bending for me, and I'm like, how does this even work? And
Yeah.
there's that aspect to him. And even the concept of death for him, he always says that we will be, not reborn as an infant, but as like almost like a 20-year-old in our prime, and everything will be restored, and we will continue our lives until we get the lesson that we are supposed to. And these kinds of things, excuse me, like kind of throws me off from time to time. But in a very interesting way, because I'm just like so intrigued by that. I'm like, how
Mm.
does he get these kinds of visions, and where does he get this information from? And I'm really eager to learn more. I look at it that way. But that is an aspect of like Neville that even as a coach, like I still never fully understood. But it's like its own weird corner right there in like his stories and whatnot. And yeah, like what you said, like he's very open about his experiences. And I think the beauty is
Mm.
that, like what you said, like people can take what resonates with them and leave the rest. Like if you
Yeah.
really just want to think about manifesting prosperity and manifesting a partner and things like that, sure, there are those aspects. But if you really want to go into the rabbit hole, like he has those stories for you sitting there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Yes, I mean, a lot of people do come to Neville because of the manifesting aspect of it, which is wonderful. But beyond all of this, I mean, what he was able to do when he was here, how he was able to literally teleport, and he didn't
Mm,
call it that at the time, but that's what he was doing.
yes.
And he was very powerful because he was able to access. You know what? He was so open to he was open to allowing himself to go there, which many people are afraid to, or many people don't believe it's even possible. But he was just open. He wasn't attached to the 3D. He wasn't attached to limitations, and that's one thing aspect that I love about him.
Yeah, he's
And I
very,
love,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Please go ahead.
No, sorry, please. I sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
No, that's all right. Every time I read a new book of his or a book that I haven't read or revisit, there's something new in there that I find, and I'm just like, wow. Right now, I'm reading Freedom for All, and I think it's one of the top two books next to The Power of Awareness. Freedom for All is brilliant. He's literally taking Bible stories and he shows you the connection, and he breaks it down for you as to how these really represent the story of creation, and how these people in these stories are the creators and how we can be.
Right.
And
Right.
it's really amazing because like the story of Noah or the story of Isaac and Jacob and Isaac and his sons.
Mm.
We think we know these stories as a Catholic. I think, and then when you read him, it's just mind blowing the way he connects everything and breaks it down for you.
Right. Yeah. I think he has a interesting way of looking at it. Like I think he
Mm,
talks about it in more of a psychological perspective, like rather
yes.
than representing them as characters. And I think like yeah, that was very interesting for me because I'm not like a Catholic or Christian personally,
Mhm.
so I didn't grow up with those stories per se. But I've heard of, like, for example, Noah's Ark. Like I've heard
Of
of those
course.
stories.
Yeah. Mm,
And for me, like when I read like what he's saying, and I think the Daniel and the lion's den, that was an interesting story, and
mm,
the way he interpreted that was really interesting for me. And I was like, oh,
mm,
okay. And I really love the way he sees it. And
yeah.
I really like, it was just eye-opening for me. And I just wanted to ask you something else as well. And as we were talking at one point, we were talking about destiny. So
Mhm.
with learning manifestation as a process and whatnot, do you really believe that there is a quote unquote destiny for us? There's some sort of a path that we are gravitating towards, or is it all the infinite possibilities and we can literally choose any possibility that we want? Like, how do you
Mm.
perceive that?
That's a good question. I've been in different Neville groups on Facebook, and many
Right.
people pose the question, well, what if I want to be, I'm 40 years old, and what if I want to be an NBA player? Well, we have to really be in the realm of some sort of reality. And I don't mean reality 3D, I mean reality in what are your desires? I
Mm,
don't have a desire to be an opera singer. I know that I could never be an opera singer, but I don't have a desire to either. So I feel like our desires are what help us navigate our path. And I don't think I mean, predestiny and destiny and fate and everything. It's a lot of those words are open to interpretation.
mhm,
And when I think about it, my one of my beliefs is that I believe that before we come here and incarnate, that we have a choice who our parents are going to be, what
mm,
lessons we're going to learn, and how we're
mm,
going to express ourselves. So I do feel that there is some sort of predestined, whatever you want to call it, path, soul path. Some people call it a soul contract,
mm.
whatever you want to
Yes.
call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I do feel that we are here to learn different lessons and also to help other people. Like, I don't know, when I think of, for example, children with cancer, I
Mm,
don't, I can't sit here and say, um, that because we a lot of times, like Louise Hay, for example, and I believe this too, that a lot of times because of our feelings and emotions, we're responsible for what happens to us health wise and disease wise, and what we're thinking and how we perceive ourselves and the world and everything. But when I think about a child that's sick, obviously the child hasn't had enough time on this earth to manifest that for themselves. But I don't know what the soul contract is before that child gets here to say, I have to teach my parents something, or I have to teach my grandparents something, or I have to teach myself something. And this is the path they chose to do that. So, I mean, obviously we are human beings, and we do have a limited consciousness when it comes to those type of things. As far as choosing a reality or choosing an experience and having it manifest, I always go back to, what are your desires? What are you being pulled towards? And not from the ego, but from the heart. And that's where I feel we can navigate our, what I call divine potential, because if God gives us a desire, the potential is within us to achieve it, to experience it, to bring it into our 3D world.
Right. I think, yeah, like I think you really phrased it so well. Funny, like I always tell, like my mom and I always sometimes have this conversation. She'll be like, "Oh, hey, you chose me, okay, so deal with it." You're kind of referring to the soul contract and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I always used to think about that, like, okay, where does this all fit in? And I think with the child example, I completely agree, because the child did not have enough time that you can you know, tell that, okay, you are responsible for this.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the manifestation community, I think one thing is that accountability is a big thing. So we
Mm-hmm.
always kind of put it on those who are experiencing those things, and we say, well, you created this, you are the creator, and it's all about you,
Mm-hmm.
you. And what we are trying to do is help that person take accountability, rather than, putting them in a victim state where they are just blaming the world and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that doesn't help as well. But as a coach, like I often wonder, like, where do you draw the line between accountability and so-called like having other forces kind of
Mm-hmm.
intervening in your life, and how do you navigate that as someone who is very much into manifestation and someone who's very much into spirituality as a whole? How do you balance that, where you are taking accountability for the experiences in your life, but at the same time you also acknowledge that there are forces that are beyond you that's also at play here?
I think one of the keys is awareness.
Mm,
Once we become aware of the process, once we become aware of frequencies and vibrations, once we become aware of our own thoughts, our own perception of the world. I mean, a lot of people have a really shitty perception of the world right now,
mm,
understandably. But when you shift your focus
mhm,
to the good around you, when you shift your focus to what's inside of you and start to meditate, start to listen to positive affirmations, start to find books that resonate with you, start to really listen to the intuition within you, which is how God speaks to us, in my opinion.
right.
Um, it like you actually mentioned the word liberating earlier, and that's what it does. When you start to become aware of all of these things, you are liberated from outside circumstances determining anything. Because yes, outside circumstances have determined everything up until this point, because A, you were not aware, B, you were in a victim state or whatever other state, um, and C, you were allowing these things from outside of you to determine how you feel, what you think. That's what I mean when I say turn off the TV. When that
Mm,
TV is on and you're watching the news, or you're watching Law and Order, or which I am guilty of, or you're watching, but I know how to shift my focus, and I know how to turn the TV off when I don't like what's on the screen.
mm,
But when you're when you're so encompassed with social media and putting a selfie of yourself up because you feel that you look sexy or attractive and you want attention, and that's all
mm,
coming from the ego. But when you start doing this work and becoming aware of the ego versus the heart, when you become aware of the outside influences versus what is within you, then you have no choice but to take responsibility. You have,
right.
I mean, you are responsible for everything that happens to you. That's my true personal opinion. But until you become aware of what you're doing, you can't change
Mm.
it. You can't change it. You can't take responsibility for it. And a lot of people are stuck in victim mode. And that is exactly what society creates. They create a victim. Everyone is offended by everything these days. You can't speak a word without having to think about it. Having it, you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
we have social media which is just an ever present camera in your face. And people have to watch what they say, and then they have to retract. And then there's cancel culture and all of this. And it's always someone else is being victimized. No, take responsibility for how you feel. Because I will tell you this, no one can say or do anything to you to make you feel a certain way, unless there's like a specific physical violence. That's different.
Mm.
But people always say, "Oh, she made me feel like this because she said that," or "They made me feel like this," or "This company um, is doing something and it made me feel left out." And no one makes you feel a certain way, and that's where we have to take responsibility. That's when the shift happens.
Right. So we take responsibility in our interpretation of what's happening around us. And that's where we take the responsibility, is what you're saying then.
Yeah, once we become aware,
Right, right, right.
once we do this work and become
Mm.
aware of yes, that we allowed all of this to happen because of what Neville says, our inner speech, our
Mhm.
perception,
Mm.
our thoughts, our feelings, which then interpret that our thoughts and feelings then bring us to our vibration, and then that determines our frequency. It's all
Right, right,
coming from us. It's all coming from our energy field because everything is energy. But
right.
until we're aware of that, we
Mhm.
can't change it and we can't take responsibility for it, but we are always responsible.
Right, right, right. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think like I've always kind of tried to come at it from a very balanced approach, in the sense that yes,
Mhm.
like act according to whatever that you need, and even Neville used to say this, like in Caesar's world, like there are certain things and responsibilities that you have, so you definitely have to, like rent has to be paid, you need money for XYZ things and whatnot. Yes, so
Mhm.
you do your responsibilities, but at the same time, like you also can think good thoughts as well. You can also think favorably. You can also have thoughts of health and nobility, and really like think good about others as well, and in the
Mm.
process create the paradise for yourself in a way. So I do feel that there's definitely a balance there that's to be
Mm.
struck, and understanding, and I think what you said is so true, in the sense that like I think becoming aware of all these things is the first step in identifying the balance. And sometimes I find myself in a situation where there's a strong intuition to do something, and I recognize
Mhm.
that that is external, but I also recognize that there are times when I know for a fact that I created what I'm seeing in my life right now. And there's a very
Mhm.
clear distinction, and it's hard to put that into words, but you will definitely feel it, and you will know it when it
Mhm.
does happen, and you can draw a clear distinction that this was divine intervention, so to speak, and this was a manifestation of your thoughts.
Yes. Yes. There is such, there is, it does become clearer and easier as you do this work. Even listening to your intuition. Some people, when they start this work, people think, I can't hear my intuition. I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. All you have to do is gauge how you're feeling. If whatever it is you're doing in the moment doesn't feel good,
Mm.
then you need to move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? It could be as simple as send this person an email. These little
Mm.
things come to you, and a lot of times we ignore them. But if we stop ignoring them and listen to these little prompts, we move into the flow of life. And
Right, right.
that leads us to the end. We don't have to. I love how Neville always says we don't have to know how. We
Mm-hmm.
as human beings are so used to wanting to control everything. We have to
Mm-hmm.
move from A to B to C to get to the end. But
Mm-hmm.
here Neville says go from A to the end and live there and dwell there and stay there, and don't lose that vision. Don't lose that feeling. Be
Mm-hmm.
in that. Be that person already. Have that. Fulfill that potential now, not when you get the job, not when you get the $1 million, not when you get the husband or the wife. Feel
Right.
that joy now. And I studied with a quantum guy who talked about always activating frequencies. And at
Mm,
first I couldn't understand the concept, but now it's so easy for me. I listen to my heart. I listen throughout the day. How am I feeling? I ask myself. And if I'm not good, I have to shift it. And I can now activate joy at any moment just for the sake of feeling good. And I can
mm,
activate peace just for the sake of being in a peaceful, calm place. And
mhm.
and Wayne Dyer used to talk about that. If you can be in a crowded room with people yelling and screaming and you are still at peace, that's how you know that you are on the path. You are on that flow. You are in the flow of life, of creation. Because
Mm,
if we allow like those outside circumstances, if we allow people, in a room to determine how you feel, then you are always susceptible to someone else controlling your destiny, your experience, your 3D life, etc.
right. Right. So what's like your process for maintaining that peace, or like just activating the state of joy in your mind? What's your process, if you could like just highlight it quickly or something? Yeah.
Um, it used to take me a while, but now literally all I do is shift my focus. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Um, my husband, he had to go, he left for work. So he's gone for 10 weeks, which is a long time. And I'll see him
Right.
in about 5 or 6 weeks. But the last few days, I was waking up and I was not feeling like getting out of bed. I didn't want to get out of bed. I was depressed. And I said, I'm not going to be this way. And the last 2 mornings, I forced myself to get up, get into my routine, do my workout, do my meditation, walk my dog. Um, whatever it is I needed to do, I made a list, make sure I went down that list. And this morning it occurred to me that my lifestyle is like this because I need to learn self-reliance in a lot of
Mm,
different ways. And the thought just came to me, and I know that that was my intuition speaking to me because there's no ego to it, there's no pushback, there's no you have to be better than this person or that person or get ahead in life. It's not anything like that. It's just I know I need this lesson and I'm
mm,
okay with it. So all I
mm,
really did was shift my focus and really listened to myself because it's in those dark moments when you hear yourself more clearly sometimes. And throughout the day, if I need to pick me up, I'll literally put on like my favorite song, or I will put on Joseph Murphy. I'll listen to him. I'll listen
right.
to Joe Dispenza. I'll listen to Wayne or Neville. Anything. I even there's an app called Think Up, and
Okay.
you can record your own affirmations on there and
Right.
anything you
Right.
want. You can
Right.
literally record anything,
Right.
and you can put binaural beats behind it
Right.
sometimes. And I wrote down a bunch of Joseph Murphy prayers because I really like his approach to everything because he talks about the divinity within us, and I have that the word divinity has such a resonance with me.
Mm,
And
mm,
Joseph
mm.
Murphy talks about that a lot. So I recorded probably a dozen of his prayers and I put those on. Anything that makes you feel good. And sometimes I don't need anything on the outside. Sometimes I just shift my focus and I can activate joy because that's the key, learning to activate these feelings without needing anything from the outside. Just because
Right.
you're alive, just because we
Mm,
have life within
mm,
us, because I'm able to see and hear and laugh and smile, and I have family around me, and I have a dog that loves me. He's like my companion, my best friend. I look outside and I can see the trees and know that they're giving me oxygen to breathe. Like it's just I don't know, it's just like a deep feeling within me that there's just this beautiful life around me, and I have reverence now. I know what it is. And
amazing.
yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah. So
sometimes I go
yeah.
back to that chapter. Go ahead.
No, no, no. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying sometimes I go back to that reference chapter in Neville's The Power of Awareness because it's very powerful. And it just
Right. So
talks
that's
about, yeah.
chapter 7. That you mentioned. I have to
Uh,
go back and look at it actually. Yeah.
yep. Chapter 7 is actually the one where the costume designer fights with her producer in her mind every day. And Neville says, well, how do you feel? And she went to Neville and said, this guy hates
Right,
me. He
right,
doesn't ever
right.
compliment me. But the Reverence chapter, I think it's the very last chapter. I think it's probably 24 or 27, whatever the last chapter is
Got it,
in the
got
power
it,
of
got it.
awareness.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I have the Neville collection, so I'm going to take a look at it like
Perfect.
right after. Because yeah, right now I'm looking into like Joseph Murphy and healing the body and everything. That's what I'm currently
Mm-hmm.
reading, and I think it's so interesting to see how Neville and Joseph Murphy, even though they learned from Abdullah, like it's their approach is slightly different. So I really wanted to kind of get an understanding of that. So that's why I've been exploring Joseph Murphy a little bit more, because up till this point, like Neville was like my primary focus, even though I have
Mm-hmm.
read Joseph Murphy's content. Like I'm trying to deep dive into Joseph Murphy a little bit more than I did so previously, just to kind of understand that. But yes, thank you for your example, though. I think I really deeply resonated with that word as well, divinity. I think it
Mm-hmm.
really I think it really paints a very um, grandiose picture of it. I think it really shows the true power. To me, it represents, like the word shows the scale and scope of the power that's within us, if you will. And that's the
Absolutely.
way I see it. Yeah. And yeah, sorry to interrupt, but we are reaching an hour mark right now. So is this like, would you like to take a break, or how would you like to go?
Um, let's continue for a little longer. And
Sure,
if
sure, sure.
he starts to get antsy, I'll let you know. But I
Okay, okay,
did
okay.
want
Yeah.
to bring up the subject of frequency, because
Mm-hmm.
during my lecture on the retreat, I wanted to paint the picture of frequency and why it's so important. And there's this quote that I heard, and it's actually in my Instagram profile. And it says, the only thing we truly have to offer the world is our frequency. And I thought that was so beautiful, because we look at a lot of us look at Neville, Joseph Murphy, um, any of these manifesting masters, for lack of a better word, as just that, a way to manifest and bring these great things into our life, and riches and opulence and luxuries. And yeah, that's all wonderful. But when you break it down to frequency and what we emanate, the frequency that we emanate, the energy that we emanate, and how people read us, because that's how people read us, through our energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever read Dr. David Hawkins, but he's come up with a scale, a map of consciousness scale, and he's gone now, but
Right.
um, he learned how to measure people's frequencies and frequencies of photographs and books and all kind of different things. And
Oh,
what he did was created this map of consciousness, and it has different levels, and it goes from 0 to 1,000. And anything between 0 and 200 is more of a negative frequency. You're moving away from source. You're really stuck in the lowest one is actually shame, which I was surprised that it was
mm,
so low. But that it was lower than say depression and sadness and anger and
right.
frustration. But I was surprised about that, because shame, when you are in shame, there
Mm-hmm.
is no movement. There's no movement. You don't know where to go. You want to hide and not move. And I thought about that, and I was just like, wow, because when you get to about 150, you're at anger. And there's, and as you move closer to 200, you're shifting from the negative to the positive. And for anger to be at 150, I was like, wow. But because there's movement in anger, it's higher on the scale, because when you're angry, you want to hit something, or you want to do something, so there's that
Mm,
movement. And then when you get above 200, you start to move into like neutrality. And then um I can't remember what's next. There's love and peace and all of
right,
that.
right, right, right.
But the what got me about this scale is that when you move above 200, you start to counterbalance thousands, just you as a single person. You start to counterbalance thousands of other people's energies below 200. For example, when
Mm,
you hit 300, you can counterbalance 50,000 other people's negative energies, negative frequencies. When you hit 500, you can counterbalance 500,000. When you get to 700, you can counterbalance. I think it's like 10 million. It's quite amazing that we can do this with just our frequency, and that's why it's so important to monitor your thoughts and monitor your feelings and monitor the vibration, monitor what you allow into your consciousness, because it's not just about the manifestation of our 3D world. It really is about humanity as a whole, the divinity in all living things as a whole. If you just take, for example, how there's been experiments on plants. Take two of the same plant, you water it the same, you feed it the same, you give it the same amount of sunlight. But if you speak harshly to one and loving to the other, the one that you speak harshly to will die and has died and has wilted. And just goes to show you that everything is energy. The spoken word has a vibration to it and a frequency to it. And even, when you use the tongue to speak these words, it's like we have to even watch that, because nothing is personal to us. It's impersonal, and that means that it goes out to the world, and it has there's always a cause and effect. There's always a repercussion of the vibration.
Right. Is it similar to the butterfly effect by any chance? Is that similar to that? When you say that everything that we kind of put out there has some sort of a cause and effect.
I believe so.
Right.
I do.
Right.
I do. Because even, quantum physics now, when they get down to the tiniest particle of a solid substance, a piece of wood, anything, they've come to see that even in the smallest particle, there's still moving energy in there. And, and that's what everything is. It's all on a frequency. Like in the Bible, in the very beginning of the Bible, it says, God was the Word. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's the Word was God, the Word is God, and something about the spoken word. And every time I hear that said now, I have such a different interpretation. It's not just, God spoke us all into existence. It's literally a frequency that was put out. Our vocals vibrate, the vocal cords vibrate to make sounds, and it's a frequency. And I'm so much more aware now of words and their true meanings, because I've been studying a lot of other than Neville, just even like what they call legalese and how words have been manipulated. For example, good morning. We say good morning. The word morning, even though it's not spelled the same, it still means a depressed state. We're in mourning for something. So I'm learning to shift these little things, like even the word understand. It means it literally means you stand under someone else's authority. So now I say understand. So it's becoming aware. Awareness is the key to all of this.
So yes, I get what you're saying, but one thing I just wanted to I really don't want to see understand anymore. But one thing I really wanted to really like get clear on is, where does intention play a role in this? Because when you say good morning, you have a good intention there. But so does it cancel out the idea of morning, or like how does that come into play, if that makes sense?
No, yeah, it actually makes total sense. Yes, we have an intention. I think it's a combination of the intention and the expression of the intention.
Okay.
If that makes sense, because I mean, I still say good morning. I still do it, and I catch myself. But everything, studying this, everything just takes on a different meaning, and I'm just more aware. Honestly, that's what it comes down to, being more aware of what we speak. Even, when you say when I was growing up, if you say the F word or anything like that, it's called a curse word. Well, curse
Mhm.
is a spell, you know?
Right, right, right.
And I actually just watched a video today about the word grammar. Grammar, when I was growing up, is how to write proper English. Well, this guy that presented the word grammar came from the word grammary, which
Mhm.
actually means like magic and spells and things like that. And I'm just like, wow.
Oh.
So our words have underlying meanings that we do
Mm.
need to be aware of because they're still in a frequency, even
Mhm,
if we have
mhm,
good
mhm,
intentions. I mean,
mhm,
I do believe that the feelings outweigh that.
mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but it's just good, something else to be aware of, how we speak.
Right, right, right. Yeah, because I always wondered like how does that come into effect? Because I always thought about, well, if does intentions triumphs everything? Like that's a thought that I've always had, is if you do something with good intention, will anything else matter? So I always thought about it, but I think what you said like made complete sense. Like they do have an effect, but it could potentially become negligible based on the power of your intentions. Would that be
Hmm.
accurate to assume that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, I think I wanted to talk about like what you do right now on social media, and I'm really interested to know about that. Like, would you be open to sharing that? What you do with like X39, and I'd really love to know more
Yeah,
about that. Yeah, I know that's a whole nother tangent to what we have been talking thus far, but if you would like to, I don't mind diving into that. Yeah.
sure, absolutely. I actually had an hour chat today with a doctor in Kuwait about it.
Right.
Um, so let me see where to start. X39. X39 is one of several patches from a company called LifeWave. And
Okay.
X39 is the most popular patch because it rejuvenates our own stem cells. And
Mm,
um, I didn't want to sell anything. I don't like to be a salesperson. I
absolutely.
was in a company prior to this,
Mm-hmm.
that was a sales company, and I absolutely hated it, and I left the company, and I didn't want to do it again. And a friend of ours, who is now a friend of ours, Gary, he was very persistent about us trying these patches, and for the longest time, I'm talking months, I just disregarded his messages and wasn't really getting back to him. And I said, just give us time. But he was persistent. And Neville says persistence is key. You have to be
Yes.
persistent, right? And so Crystal and I, my sister and I, we were watching a video.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the video, these two guys that were chatting mentioned these patches. And
Mm,
one of them said, um, his uncle had CLL, which is chronic lymphocytic leukemia.
mm,
And he was wearing these patches because what happens when you have that is some of your lymph nodes begin to swell. And his uncle was putting the X39 directly onto the swollen lymph node. And within 3 to 4 weeks, the swelling was practically gone. And a close member of our family has CLL, and
mm,
he had a swollen lymph node on each side of his neck that were almost the size of golf balls at the time. And I'm into natural remedies. My sister's into natural remedies, holistic,
mm-hmm,
anything, all alternative stuff.
mm-hmm,
And we had our family member on all of this alternative stuff. And what it did was, for the first 2 years that he was since he was diagnosed, was it literally kept his blood pristine. And when you have leukemia, you have to
mm,
watch your blood levels. But his doctor was very impressed with his blood work all the time, because he was taking soursop and high dose vitamin C and CBD and red clover, and he was doing celery juice in the morning, and we just had him on a whole regimen. But he didn't want to change his diet. And when you're Italian, you like to eat meat and you like to eat cheese and
right.
bread and bread. So he didn't want to change his diet. So I really think because of that, the lymph nodes swelled. So after six
Mm,
months, everything we did, we couldn't really get the swelling down. So we tried these patches finally. And within 1 month, the swelling was down significantly, more than
mm,
half. So that made a believer out of Crystal and me. And we started to order them. 10 months ago, I started wearing them. I could see a difference in my skin and my hair. And when I would go to the gym, if I had sore muscles, I would put one of the patches right where the sore muscle was, and within minutes it would be gone. Same thing with menstrual cycles. If we had
Mm.
cramps, I would put the patches right on my stomach, and the cramps would be gone. And then most recently, last week, I went to the eye doctor, and I've been wearing glasses and contacts since I was 12 years old. So we're going back 28 years. And every
Mm.
time I would go to the eye doctor, my prescription would either stay the same or get worse. And last week, he kept putting these lenses in front of my eyes, and he said, "Is this better or worse?" And I didn't want to say it was better because I was afraid that the prescription was going to continue to get worse. And he said,
Mm.
actually, this is a step lower than your current prescription. And I was
Mm.
like, "Really?" And he said, "Yes." He said, your eyesight is getting better. And I was like, I mean, that doesn't happen. And I've never heard that happening. It never happened to me in all the years I've been wearing glasses and contacts. So the only thing I can really attribute it to are the patches, because I've always eaten healthy. I've always taken vitamins. I drink water. I don't do soda or processed foods or sugars. And it's never happened before this. So what the X39 does is, this is it's patented technology, and it's called phototherapy. And
Okay.
it's our bodies give off heat, infrared heat and light. It's
Mhm,
like if
mhm.
you ever wear the goggles, that's how you can find people in the dark. Do
Right,
you know what I'm
right,
talking
right. Yeah,
about?
yeah.
So it captures the heat and sends it back into the body, and the X39 specifically activates what's called the GHK peptide. It's a copper peptide in our bodies, and the copper peptide is responsible for the stimulation of our stem cells and rejuvenating stem cells. And that's what this
Mm.
particular patch does. And I love it because there's no chemicals in the patches, there's no drugs, there's no stimulants,
Mhm,
there's nothing in the patches except for amino acids, water, um, natural compounds like crystals,
mhm,
and that's about it. Um, that's all that's in there. And they're little round stickers. They're about an inch and a half in diameter, maybe 2 inches in diameter.
mhm.
And they work in tandem with acupressure points. So when you order the patch, it shows you where to put it. I
Right.
sometimes I abide by that, but if I have a specific um, pain or muscle tension, I'll put it directly on it. But usually I use it where they tell me to use it because it's for the acupressure point.
Right,
I
right, right.
even and I love it. And I've seen, I mean, there are testimonials from things like psoriasis
Mhm,
to knee pain. You know, people have had meniscus problems and all kind of things, torn ligaments. And there's for autism, I've seen testimonials for Alzheimer's and dementia. Just recently, someone asked me about tremors, and there are tons of testimonials for tremors and how they stopped within days. Some people are lucky and it happens within days. And some people need the 60 to 90 days to see it, but they're constantly working no matter what.
right,
Um,
right, right.
in my experience, I've seen faster results in people that are whose health is a lot worse than a healthy person. Just because I
Mm,
think their body needs so much help. And
mm.
they're able to see it. You know, they've been in pain so long, or they've had, thinning hair for so long or something like that, because of a disease that they have or whatever it is. I mean, my sister had a testimonial last week. A woman that hadn't walked in a few years is now walking with a cane in only a week or so.
Right,
So
right.
there is something very special to these. Especially, I love the fact that it activates your stem cells, rejuvenate your stem cells without having to have stem cells enter your body from a foreign object entity, from fetal cells from an animal. That's
Right,
what I love about it, that it's your own stem cells.
right, right, right. Awesome. Yeah, because I really wanted to understand, because I've seen you,
Hmm.
speak about it from time to time, and I really wanted to understand the science behind it. And I know for a fact that because I really have really a lot of respect for you and your sister, because like I
Thank
said,
you.
like I really know her content from like the pandemic and everything. So
Yes.
I really wanted to, and we'll talk about this later as well, but I really wanted to, yeah, understand, because if you guys are doing it, surely I felt that you guys must have done your research, and I really was
Definitely.
curious to know what the the story was and the journey behind it. And I'm definitely going to take a look at it for sure. And yeah, thank you for sharing that with me. And yeah, I'll put the links for that in the description as well, so that the audience can find it down the line as well. And yeah,
Yes.
so yeah, sorry,
I'm,
yeah,
I was going to say, I'll send you, I actually have some information that I would love to send you.
sure.
The first is about the X39, but there's also they're like four little slides that
Mhm.
show you what happens literally within the first 24 hours, what happens
Mhm.
in the first 1 to 3 months, and then 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months. It's fascinating how
Right.
these work.
Sure, I'd love to take a look at those. And if I can, I'll try to leave a description in the my bio as well for that as well, so that the audience can see it. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be great. Um, I'm just going to read to you really quickly
sure.
about those short little things I said. So it says what to expect in the first few days. 4,000 genes begin to reset. And I will before I'm just going to preface this with that all of the patches, especially the X39, they've all been through clinical trials.
Mm,
So this isn't just hocus pocus or something that they made up.
right, right,
They've been
right.
able to prove these things. So in the first few days, 4,000 genes begin to reset. Within 24 hours, the stem cell activation patch begins to reset 3,000 to 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state. People using the stem cell patches will experience an immediate effect through elevation of antioxidants, a decrease in inflammation, an increase in energy. Then it goes to 1 to 3 months. Physical changes start to occur. Activating your stem cells leads to an increase in collagen in the skin, which decreases wrinkles and increases hair growth. If it says if you don't feel, even if you don't feel the effects, rest assured, the new stem cells may be regenerating an internal organ or tissue before repairing something you feel. And Crystal and I
Mm,
talk about this all the time. People are like, well, I don't see anything. It's like, do you see a difference when you take a vitamin C pill?
mm,
Probably not, but it is working within you. Um, then 3 to 6 months is active stem cell repair. The stem cells turn into any cell your body needs for repair. Your stem cells are now actively creating deep healing in your body and repairing damage caused by the aging process. Excuse me. And then within 6 to 12 months, reverse aging begins. In a recent study, 14 out of 15 people lowered their vascular age by an average of 8 years after just 6 months of using the X39. So it's
mm.
literally reversing the age of your vascular system. It's
Right.
incredible.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's really great. And it's yeah. I think thank you for sharing that, because I think like when you read it out, I was really kind of blown away by the effects. And yes, I think sometimes things do happen beneath the surface before they do show an
Mhm.
external effect. So definitely, like with everything, I think a bit of patience is necessary with all
Definitely.
things. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that. So, is this only within the US, or how does this work? Like, do you guys ship
No, we're in 80
internationally, or
countries.
right?
We're in 80 countries. So if there's a question of which country, just let me know and I could always access it. I don't have all 80 countries memorized, but I could
For
easily
sure.
access that information for you. And if not, there's always a way around it and we can discuss that off air.
Sure,
But
sure, sure. Yeah.
yeah, we could always figure a way to get you patches if you're not part of the 80 countries.
Right. Yeah. Because I just wanted to quickly get that information out there as well, in case if folks are wondering. Generally speaking, because most of my audience are from the US, but like there's a minority. There's a actually there's Italians as well. Funny enough.
Love it.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I just wanted to get a view on that as well. But yeah, so diving into a bit of a rabbit hole kind of a territory, just a little bit, is yeah. So as I said, I first discovered your sister through the pandemic at that point. So I think my ex sent a video regarding like your sister's content and everything. And
Mhm.
I think one of her videos really went viral. I'm not sure which one it was.
Mhm.
But I remember there was this one video that was really circulating all around the community at one point
Mhm.
about the pandemic and everything. And so what, like, how did that journey like begin for her? Or do you guys like, did your journeys like start at a similar point, or was her journey very separate from yours? And how did that
Mhm.
begin?
First of all, it was never intended. None of that was
Mhm.
ever intended. The viral video, none of that. You know, and that's one thing about intuition.
Right,
She
right,
just
right,
she just made a video to just say,
right, right,
"Don't turn the TV off. Stop listening. This is not
right,
what they're
right.
telling us it is."
Mm,
And
mm, mm,
that
mm.
first video is the one that went viral. I think there were about 20 million shares or something, or views, or it's something crazy like that.
Right.
And that's when it went. I mean, and if you look at her social media, she's at about 165,000 followers, and that grew overnight organically. But she should really be closer to 1 million. They take people from her every day. If she gets
Wow.
100 followers, they take 110. So yeah. But regarding your question, um, Crystal's always been in front of the camera, and I've
Mm-hmm.
always been behind the camera.
Right.
So it took a little longer for me to
Mm-hmm.
start making videos and feeling natural and doing this. But talking about something like this, talking about the X39 patches, talking about spirituality, things that I
Mm-hmm.
love, I don't mind it anymore, because
Mm-hmm.
my whole again, the focus my whole focus has shifted since 2020. 2020, I was in a very angry space for
Mm-hmm.
everything that was going on. I couldn't understand how some people couldn't see through. I couldn't understand our political climate.
Right.
And I just wanted to argue with anyone and everyone about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now I realize you don't have to push against things. And it actually, when you do push against things and you do create these arguments, even within yourself, like we were talking earlier, we're fighting within yourself and can't wait to
Mm-hmm.
tell people how you feel and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Doing all of that just draws to you such negativity and negative energy, and
Mm-hmm.
it stays with you. And I was never a negative person. I was always an optimist my whole life. But
Right.
that really showed me a different way. But I'm grateful for that experience, because if not, I wouldn't have become aware. I wouldn't have sought some kind of teacher like Bob Proctor.
Mm.
And in turn, I wouldn't have found Neville, who's opened me up
Right.
to a whole new world
Mm-hmm.
of a way of life, honestly. So
Right. Okay. So this is where I kind of get I guess I have a dilemma, is that on one hand you recognize certain things that are going on that isn't right, and part of you wants to speak out on those, and a part of
mhm,
you wants to kind of raise the awareness, but in doing so you also don't want to attract negative energy to yourself.
mhm,
And sometimes with internet, like I think you would agree more than anyone, is that when you put something out there, there'll always be someone who is really on their phones and quick to pass a remark of sorts that can get to
mm.
us. So how do we balance that? Like, how do we balance this need to share whatever that we know, that clearly we know that something is off, like during that time in
Mhm.
2020 and whatnot, but how do you balance that with not wanting to draw negative attention, and maintaining our inner peace? Like, where did you draw the line there?
I drew the line between my heart and my ego.
Mm, okay.
The ego wants wants everyone to listen to you. The ego thinks that if they don't hear it from you, they're not going to
Mm,
hear it.
mm,
The
mm,
ego
mm,
the ego wants the attention,
mm,
and I it didn't resonate with me anymore. What resonated with me was sharing, even in spiritual messages, there's a subtle way of saying that there's a shift happening, that everything that we know isn't
mm,
really truth.
Mm.
And whoever is ready to hear that will hear it, and whoever isn't ready to hear it will not hear it, no matter what you do or say. And
Mm.
when you realize that, it brings you peace. It brings you such peace. And I only now share messages that resonate with me. I won't go into the shot. I won't go into any of that stuff because the information is there. If you can't see it, if you don't find it, if you don't care to look for it, that's the ignorance that you will remain in. And I don't want to judge that. I don't want to know about it. I don't, if I can bring a message to you
Can
that
you hear me? Hello.
this,
I'm
yes.
unable to hear you at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We were talking about ego versus the heart.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
when you're presenting information, I've just learned there's a way to present information. And if people aren't ready to hear it, they're never going to hear it.
Mm,
and
mm, mm,
and regarding things like the jab, um, the virus,
mm,
the policies that they're trying to pass here in the States,
mhm,
regarding all of these, I mean, the farmers, all of that,
mhm,
regarding all of these things, if people want to remain in ignorance, there's nothing that you can do about it. All you can do is present
mm,
what resonates with you.
mhm,
And for me, it's positive messages. It's also a subtle way of saying there is an awakening happening. We don't have to throw it in
mm,
people's faces because people don't like that. People don't respond well to that anyway. People don't
mm.
respond well to yelling and screaming and saying you have to listen to this. You have to hear me. They're never
Right.
going to hear you. They're never going to hear you. So it's just learning that and accepting that and being at peace with it, and not allowing the ego to say you have to do it this way. You have to put out these negative messages. You have to you have to get attention from this and all that. So
Mm. Yes, I really love what you said earlier on, where you mentioned that you like just because people have to hear a message doesn't mean they have to hear it from you per se.
yeah, exactly. And like I said earlier, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and it doesn't mean an actual physical human being as a teacher. It could
Mm,
be an article. It could be they could see a sign that actually snaps them out of their
mhm,
other way of thinking.
mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm.
and sometimes some people just aren't meant to shift in that way. Um, some people are meant to remain um, in these shackles, for lack of a better word, because that's what we're in. We're prisoners in our own mind
Right.
if we don't emerge and recognize and become aware, honestly.
So why do you think that is the case if some people are meant to stay in that way? Like why do you think that is?
Because they're conditioned to be there, because
Mm,
they've allowed society to dictate their life. I mean, people go to nine
mm,
to fives for 40 years just to have a break on the weekends and a week vacation once a year,
right.
and they're
Right.
miserable. That never resonated with that lifestyle. Never resonated with me ever. The corporate lifestyle.
Likewise. Yeah. Yeah.
And some people just think, there's that saying, and it's all constructed this way purposely, but there's that saying, um, you pay taxes and you die. The two things you have to do in life: pay taxes and die. That's a saying here in the States.
Mhm. Right.
And it's purposely constructed that way because um what I'm learning now, I'm actually studying, I don't even know what to call it, shifting my status in America,
Mm-hmm.
because back in the 1800s they passed the 14th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment made everyone a citizen. And um a citizen is a public servant. That's what the word means, municipal
Mm,
servant. And essentially, we became slaves as debtors. We were born
mm,
creditors, and then when we get a birth certificate, and this is
mhm.
all very deep down a rabbit hole that I'm not going to
Yeah.
go through tonight because it's a very long story. But
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
just I'm just learning that how far this government has gone to hide things in plain sight, to brainwash us, just like that saying, pay taxes and die. It's
Mm,
all brainwashing and generations before me, my grandparents thought that's the way we live.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah,
And
it's
bankers run the
insane. Yeah.
world. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I said bankers run the world and we don't realize it. We
Right,
don't
and it's
recognize.
so insane. I
Mhm.
really don't know like how this whole like construct is. It's really sometimes it's mind boggling to think about, because like you said, it's happening in front of our very eyes,
Mm.
and you're part of you. It's like, wait, am I the only one noticing this? Like, how is this happening? Like, and I think when I recognized this, like not too long ago, a couple of years back, it really threw me off.
Mhm.
As someone who was just beginning to understand the world, like you spoke about 9 to 5. I had my first
Mm.
taste of a 9 to 5 in my service, and I recognized that, like what you said, it's like working through, looking forward to the weekend, and time
Mhm.
just flies by, and before you know it, you're already in your 50s or 60s and waiting for retirement. And I'm like, is this life?
Exactly. Exactly. You've literally lived. Okay, say from the time you're, say, 25, we'll be generous. We'll say from the time you're 25 to the time
Hmm.
time you're 65, you spent 40 hours in a box in a building without windows that open, under fluorescent lights, following orders, taking 30-minute lunch breaks, looking forward to 2 days out of the week. And that is not life to me. That is not life. That was never meant to be life. But
Hmm.
we're literally slaves to the economic system, to making money for the
Hmm.
people that own these companies, for the
Hmm.
elites, for
Hmm.
the people that run the world, the bankers especially.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's not life. God never intended that to be life for us. And this all connects on the spiritual path, because
Hmm.
we have, like I said earlier, we have this divine potential within us. We
Hmm.
have no idea. It's suffocated. It's literally suffocated and snuffed out from like you said earlier. We're taught all these things in school that we don't need, but we're not taught the things that we do need. You know,
Mm,
it's
mm,
and
mm.
it's there. It's purposefully done that way.
Right, right. Yeah, like I do believe that that is so intentional,
Mm.
and they make us ignorant on purpose. But that begs the question. So then, what is the solution to this? At least in your opinion, yes, like learning knowledge and being aware. That is, I guess, part of the solution. But like, how do you get yourself out of this like system that potentially has been created for us?
Um, right now, I am going through a legal process
Okay.
to, like I said, change my status.
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
will
mm-hmm.
no longer be. I will no longer be a 14th Amendment citizen.
Okay.
My status will change to a state national. It's a long, lengthy process. You have to
Mm,
learn. You have to learn everything that has been done to us, and then you have to learn. You have to relearn. You have to learn new things. You have to learn how to handle yourself in a courtroom. You have to learn that the courts that we believe, and the judges that we believe have authority, they do not. They don't have jurisdiction over us. There's only
mm,
special courts that really do.
mm.
You have to. God gave us dominion over the land, air, and the water, and once we get a birth certificate, we are considered lost at sea, believe it or not. We are considered under the water jurisdiction. And I know this might be all gibberish to you and you might understand it because I didn't at first. But they actually, once you get a birth certificate, they that your parents unknowingly sign you over to the state,
Right.
and you are considered a minor until you die, literally, until you go through this process and you claim what is called a minor estate. There's a number on your birth certificate that they actually take, and they trade it, they bond it, and then they trade it on a market here. And no one knows this. People don't know this, but it's coming more and more into the light as we speak.
Right. Right.
And
Wow.
so for a first world country, that's what you can do. You can learn about it, you can read about it, you can do your own research. Um, you can live off grid. I mean, if you don't want to
Mhm,
go through that process, that's fine, but you can live off grid. But
mhm,
but until you go through the process and change your status,
mhm.
they still have jurisdiction over you, unfortunately.
Mm, mm. So in a way, like technically speaking, they can come after you, is what you're saying then. In one way or another, even if you
Yeah.
go off grid, right?
Yeah, because there's these things in America that are called land patents, and people
Mm.
don't know about them. So when you buy a house and you have a mortgage on your house, um, even if you pay the mortgage off, even if you pay for the house in cash, you
Mm.
don't own the house. You have a deed
Oh
to the
dear Lord.
house, but the ownership is really the state. And until you get a land patent, no one can come on your land. Once you do that, no one can come on your land. No one can tell you that you can't grow things on your land. No one can tell you that you can't collect rainwater, etc. So until
Right.
you go through these processes, get yourself a land patent, get yourself an MCO. An MCO is a manufacturer certificate of origin for your automobile. We're so used to calling it a vehicle. This is how they
Mm.
trick you. So a vehicle is really something. It's a mode of transportation that you use for commerce. So like Uber or a truck that's carrying goods, that's commerce. But
Ah.
if you're just traveling, you're in an automobile. That's the difference. And when you operate an automobile, you don't need a license. And they don't tell you that. They make us believe that we need a license. They make us pay all these fees. They can't write us tickets because we have the right to travel. Unless the only time you can really get in trouble, when you change your status and you become you then are moved on into common law,
Mm.
is when there's a victim. If there's a victim, you'll get in trouble. So if you're doing 50 miles an hour in a school zone and God forbid you hit a child, then
Mm.
there's a victim there, you're in the wrong. But if you're doing over the speed limit and there's nobody on the road and a cop stops you, they have no jurisdiction to do anything because you're traveling. You're not putting anybody's life in danger. Um, all of these, like, for example, when this country started, we gave the government the authority. We, the people, gave the government the authority to give us 16 services, provide
Okay.
for us 16 services. There's over, I think it's 9,000 services now that are unconstitutional.
Wow.
But because we have a birth certificate, because we're 14th Amendment citizens, that Constitution was suspended in 1871. And until you change your status and become a state national and move back under the land jurisdiction, which is what a treaty is, a constitution is a land, um,
Mm.
whatever you want to call it, document. You're no longer under the Constitution until then.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and people don't know this. So what I can say is that more people are learning this. In 2018, there was about 45,000 people that changed their status, and last year there was 22 million.
Wow. Okay. So there's definitely a huge
Movement. Yep.
revelation. Yeah.
Mm.
So what's the population of US, just for context? Like
Population is around 430 million.
right, right. Okay, 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 okay. So it's definitely growing then. I mean, even if like 22 million is like a drop in the bucket, if that's the case, it's definitely a significant size then.
Yes, definitely significant. Hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy how you just mentioned, like, we technically speaking, like, we don't need a license for driving. Like,
Hmm.
I'm just kind of blown away because these are things that even if people do know, like, I think even if you're working in the industry or some public sector, and you know about all these things, like, you may not necessarily reveal these details. And I think, like, you have to kind of dig for these informations. And I'm glad, like, people like you exist. And thanks for sharing this with me as well, by the way, because I really appreciate it, because I'm outside of the US, but still, like, I think just understanding all these things, like, really opens the eye up to the amount of things that's going on, and also allows you to really go on the path for freedom. That's the intention of it.
Hmm.
It's not to really understand and say that, oh my god, these people are like this way, but you understand how, quote unquote, the game is being played, and you
Hmm.
remove yourself out of the board completely. And I feel like that is the intention these days.
Absolutely. And obviously, the goal is freedom. But
Right.
even beyond that, the goal is the ability to govern yourself. We are human
Absolutely.
beings, we are human beings, and we're shown purposely, constantly shown murders on TV, in TV
Mm,
shows,
mm,
murders, rape, sex, all of that, to
mm,
make us more, convince us that we're more animalistic. That's not who we are. We are
mm,
able to govern ourselves. We know right and wrong.
mm,
The motto, there's kind of like a motto, and it's love your neighbor, do no harm. For a
mm,
state national, when you become a state national, you have to be an honorable person. And it's funny, one of the tests that they talk about is, are you one of the people that after you have a shopping cart, do you leave it in the middle of another parking space, or do you bring it back? And if you bring it back,
mhm.
that shows the honor, in you. And and that's how you know that you've pretty much passed the test. But
Right,
it's little
right,
things,
right.
it's the small things like that that really make your character. And you have to be an honorable person to even fathom doing this, really.
100%. I think there's a level of like morality and conscience that kind of
Mhm.
comes into play here. Like because I think like
Definitely.
what you the example that you gave, like it's really being considerate to others, and I always come at it from the perspective of you wouldn't want that to be done to you, so why would you do that to someone else? If it's
Exactly.
a minor inconvenience of any kind, and that I think is also how the whole idea of helping others comes into play as well, because I always tell people, like, if I were to be in another person's situation, I would want somebody to help me as well. Like there
Mhm.
was one point, my friends and I were out at I think it was 2022 of New Year's, and this guy was like shouting in the restaurant at this girl saying why the food was late and everything, and he was like swinging his arm in
Mm.
front of me and everything. And
Mhm.
I was like much smaller than him, but I just gave him a peace of mind, simply because, yeah, like I told him that, like, you're not supposed to do that, and have some empathy. And so, I really have to come at it from that perspective, because otherwise, we really don't learn about these systems and whatnot. And yeah, but thank you so much for saying, and I know we have to wrap it up really soon. So is there anything else you would like to say regarding
I
any
would
of this?
I
Yeah.
I want to do this again.
Like
This is fantastic.
absolutely. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I thank you for your time. Honestly, like I really really enjoyed it. So, is there anything you would like to tell the audience, like how to find you, or any? I will leave all the links in the description,
Thank you.
including the app and X39 and everything. But is there anything you would want to tell the audience? Any message that you just manifestation or otherwise, anything? Yeah.
The only thing is to just be aware of your thoughts and feelings, and what are you telling yourself? How do you see yourself? Know
Okay.
that there is infinite potential within you that
Mhm.
God put there, and that no one else can do what you are meant to do.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your time once again. And
Welcome. Thank you
yeah,
for
I
having me.
really
Love
no,
this.
absolutely. It's a pleasure. And yeah, we definitely have to do this down the line once again. And yeah, so guys, we have come to this end of this video. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on the bell notification so that you guys will know when I upload a new video every single week. And as always, guys, stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.